The air at the Van Dorn Lake House on Lake Tahoe held a scent I could never quite place. To others, it was just pine and the lingering smoke from a cooled grill, but to me, it always carried a bitter undertone, the faint, metallic scent of fear. I sat apart on the wicker porch chair, watching my daughter, Lena. She moved like a delicate bird among predators, pouring expensive scotch for her husband, Preston, and his father, Garrett. Her laughter was too bright, too strained. It was the sound of someone trying to prove she belonged in a place where she never would. Their estate was a monument to cold perfection, impeccable lawns, massive windows that stared at the lake like vacant eyes. I only ever came for Lena. "Please, Mom, it's important for family," she'd say. Her hope was a fragile thing I couldn't bear to break. That afternoon, the scotch had done its work. Garrett's boisterous charm had curdled into something darker. His eyes, heavy and assessing, landed on Lena, bundled in her autumn jacket against the chill wind coming off the water. "Why's our little city mouse all wrapped up?" he boomed. "Afraid of a little fresh air?" Lena offered a nervous smile. "It's just windy, Mr. Garrett." "Windy?" Preston parroted, a cruel mimicry in his voice. "Girls used to swim in October, made 'em tough, not like this hothouse generation." A cold dread, sharp and familiar, tightened in my chest. "Leave her be," I said, my voice quiet but clear. It sounded out of place there, like a whisper in a cathedral. Preston turned. A spark of malice lit his gaze. He resented my presence, my care. "Relax, Eleanor. We're just playing, right, sweetheart?" Lena nodded, that forced smile still plastered on her face. "It's fine, Mom." But it wasn't fine. I saw the look that passed between father and son, predatory, conspiratorial, the look wolves share before the hunt. "Let's test that toughness," Garrett declared, heaving his large frame up. "Preston, help me. We'll escort Lena down for a little dip. Wake her up." "What are you doing?" I was on my feet, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. "Garrett, stop this. It isn't funny." They were deaf to me. They each took one of Lena's arms. Her gasp was more surprise than fear. She still believed desperately that it was a game. "Preston! Daddy, no! Let go!" Her protest was a nervous laugh, trying to appease. They dragged her across the flawless lawn toward the wooden dock. I followed, my voice rising. "Stop! You're drunk! You don't know what you're doing!" I was air, an insignificant noise. They hauled her to the very end of the dock, over water so deep it looked black. "Go on, city mouse. Show us your grit," Preston sneered. "No, please!" The laughter finally died in her throat, replaced by pure animal terror. She understood. I rushed forward, grabbing at Preston's arm. He shoved me back with a casual brutality. I stumbled, the world tilting, and in that moment of imbalance, they pushed her. The splash was a dull, final sound. Her body, weighed down by her clothes, vanished into the dark water. Ripples spread, then silence. 1 second, 2, 3, then their laughter, loud, booming, gut-deep laughter that shattered the lakeside quiet. "That'll cool her off," Garrett wheezed, wiping a tear from his eye. But Lena did not surface. My own scream was trapped, a frozen block in my throat. I stared at the water, where the ripples were already fading. When she finally broke the surface, it was only for a gasp. I saw her face, pale as wax. A dark ribbon of blood traced a path from her temple. Her eyes were empty, unseeing. She didn't flail, she didn't cry out, she simply stared into the void before her body went limp and began to sink again. That's when the scream tore loose from me, a raw animal sound that came from a place deeper than soul. "Help! She's drowning! She hit her head!" Preston and Garrett stood on the shore, their laughter dying into smirks. "Oh, come on, Eleanor," Preston waved a dismissive hand. "Stop the drama. She'll climb out. The cold will do her good." They walked away. They actually walked away. I stared, disbelief turning my blood to ice. "Where are you going? Come back! She's dying!" Car doors slammed, the engine roared. Preston leaned out the window, that same vile grin on his face. "Don't ruin the evening, mother-in-law. See you at home." And they were gone. The crunch of gravel faded, leaving only the sound of lapping water and the echo of my own helplessness. I stood paralyzed, my scream dying in my throat, hardening into a knot of ice in my chest. The world narrowed to that dark spot on the water. Then a putter, a small inflatable fishing boat 100 yards out, a man in a faded jacket. I didn't scream again. I had no voice left. I simply raised my arm, a slow, deliberate gesture, and pointed to the place where my daughter had disappeared. He saw me. He saw my stillness, my absolute despair. He understood. The boat's motor whined as he shot toward the dock. He asked no questions. He grabbed a boat hook, peered into the depths, and with a strength born of urgency, hooked Lena's jacket. He hauled her into the boat, a sodden, blue-lipped doll. My fingers, cold and clumsy, dialed 911. My voice to the operator was calm, detached, mechanical. I gave the address as the fisherman worked, performing CPR in his rocking boat. Images flashed behind my eyes, not of the horror before me, but of a lifetime. Lena at 5 with a skinned knee, at 16 in a graduation gown, on her wedding day, looking at Preston with a hope that made my heart ache. I had swallowed their poison for years, smiling through dinners, biting my tongue, all for her fragile peace. What a fool I had been. The ambulance arrived in a whirl of light and sound. The professionals took over. Pulse weak, severe hypothermia, head trauma. The words were clinical stones dropped into the quiet. The fisherman nodded to me, a silent communication between strangers bound by a moment of horror, and slipped away. As I watched them load my daughter, my child, into the ambulance, something inside me settled. Not peace, not grief, a decision, cold and absolute, crystallizing in the core of my being. The woman I had been, the quiet mother, the retired librarian, the polite mother-in-law, died on that dock the moment their laughter drowned out my daughter's silence. I took out my phone. My hands were steady now. I scrolled past countless names to one I hadn't dialed in over a decade. My brother, Isaac. Our last conversation had been a screaming match. I condemned his methods, his ruthless pursuit of truth that left scorched earth in its wake. He was a journalist blacklisted, an outcast for tearing down a powerful man with too little regard for the collateral damage. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. I was sure he was gone. On the 4th ring, his voice, deeper and rougher than I remembered. "Yeah? Who is this?" "Isaac. It's me." My whisper was barely a breath. A long, heavy silence stretched over the line. I could feel him shifting, the old gears turning. He finally said, "I'm listening, Eleanor." He didn't ask why. He never wasted words. I looked down the empty road where their SUV had vanished. They'd be almost home by now, probably laughing, thinking of dinner, their cozy, cruel world still intact. "They're heading home now," I whispered, my voice as cold and flat as the lake surface. "Do what you do best." I hung up. The bridges were burned. The rules were ashes. The ambulance doors closed. The siren wailed, and it carried away the last piece of my old life.
I stood alone in the gathering twilight, and for the first time in years I felt no fear, only a terrible, perfect calm, the calm of a woman who has just pulled the trigger. What happened next was not a mother's hysterical revenge. It was a surgical strike, planned with the cold precision of a strategist who knows her enemy's every weakness. Isaac didn't dig into the present, the drunken cruelty, the near drowning. That was mere symptom. He went for the root, the rot at the foundation of the Van Dorn name. He unearthed a story buried 22 years in the same lake's mud. Garrett's former business partner, Malcolm Pierce, a fishing accident, a body pulled from the water, a case closed too quickly after an envelope of cash and a threatening photo found their way to a detective's desk. Isaac found that retired detective living with his guilt and his bees. He found Pierce's son, who harbored letters proving his father was about to expose Garrett for fraud. He pieced together a narrative of murder disguised as misfortune. While I sat in the bleach-scented silence of the hospital, holding my daughter's cold hand as she drifted in and out of consciousness, Isaac was weaving a net, and I was providing the final threads. Preston called. His voice was irritation, not concern. "Lena, stop sulking. Come home. We got carried away." "She's alive." I hung up. They sent flowers, a grotesque bouquet of white lilies, funeral flowers, with a note, "Darling, let's not allow your mother's theatrics to spoil our fun." It was their final, fatal mistake. Arrogance, the belief that they were untouchable, that their money and name were a shield against consequence. They didn't know I had just handed a master investigator not a domestic dispute, but a decades-old murder. They were still playing checkers, while we had moved to chess. Isaac published everything. Not to a newspaper, they'd blacklisted him years ago, but directly to the world. A personal blog, a flood of emails to every news desk, prosecutor, and influencer he could find. The story was a dry, factual bomb. Financial fraud, a covered-up murder, and a new attempted killing on the same stretch of shoreline. Garrett's world of whispered deals and bought loyalties imploded. His phone calls to old allies went unanswered. The shield of his reputation cracked, then shattered. In a final, desperate move, Garrett sent men to silence Isaac. They broke down the door of an empty apartment, a decoy Isaac had prepared. Their thuggish violence, captured by a neighbor's security camera, became the perfect epilogue to Isaac's story, proof of the corruption he'd exposed. The fall was swift, and it was public. Arrests, frozen assets, the gleaming facade of the Van Dorn name replaced by mugshots and scandal headlines. We didn't watch. Lena and I were already elsewhere, in a small, sun-drenched apartment I'd quietly bought back, the one near the public library where she'd grown up. We were packing a different life into boxes. Not of finery, but of meaning. Her favorite mug, a photo of us in the park. 1 month after the lake, Lena signed the divorce papers with a hand that did not tremble. She had emerged from the icy water and the hospital bed quieter, wiser, her eyes clear of the desperate need to please. The last box was taped shut. She sat on the windowsill, looking out at a future that was finally her own. "Where do we go now?" she asked, her voice soft with a tentative hope. I placed an old familiar key in her palm, the one with the little silver book charm. "Home," I said. The lake is still now, its dark surface holding only the reflection of the moon. The echoes of cruel laughter have faded, carried away on the wind. replaced by the quiet sound of pages turning in a sunlit room. Sometimes justice is not a loud verdict from a courtroom. It is a silent, unwavering choice. It is the deep, steady love that refuses to look away and the quiet strength to act when all other paths have closed. Let the image of the still water soothe you. Let the feeling of resolution calm your spirit. The battle is over. Peace has been restored, not with a shout, but with a whisper. And in that quiet there is space for healing, for rest. Allow your own thoughts to settle like silt in calm water. Feel the weight of the story lift, leaving you light and ready for sleep. Drift now into gentle darkness where there is only safety and quiet and deep restoring peace. Good night.